mercy is profound, whose kindness is forever. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. All expressions of praise and thankfulness are for Allah Rabbul Alameen, who is the sustainer of the entire existence. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, whose mercy is profound, whose kindness is forever. Maliki Yawmiddin, the one who is the master of the day of judgment. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. O God, we worship you and you alone, and we seek help from you and only you. Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim, show us the right path. Sirat al-lazina an'amta alayhim, the path of those on whom you showered your mercy. Ghayr al-maghdubi alayhim, the ones who were not declared deserving your displeasure. Walad dallin, nor the ones who went astray. Surah Al-Fatiha, the beginning chapter of the Quran, is significant in many ways. It is significant because the Quran begins with this surah. And it is also important because as Muslims, when we pray, we have been asked to recite this surah, this chapter, in every rakat unit of prayer that we say. Quite obviously, there has to be something very special about this surah that has caused it to be positioned at the very beginning of the Quran. The reason is that this surah very aptly and appropriately expresses the feelings of all those humans who, at the time of the revelation of the Quran, or call it immediately before the revelation of the Quran began, were desperately looking for guidance from the Almighty. They had already started following the right path as best as they could on the basis of their own good nature. But they were aware of the fact that even though they know God, they know the fact that He is merciful, His merciful is forever, that He is the master of the day of judgment, and that He deserves to be worshipped and nobody else, and that He is the one who needs to be sought, to be contacted for all needs where we are desperately looking for divine help. Nobody else has the power, the ability to know our prayers and to respond to them. To that extent, it seems that the people who were seeking for guidance from the Almighty, they knew. And these are the emotions that have been expressed in the first three verses of the Quran. First three verses of this chapter. But thereafter, the surah is asking the Almighty for help. Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim. O God, guide us to the right path. These words have within the scope of their understanding the possibility of not just the meanings, simple meanings that I've mentioned, show us the right path, but these words also connote, they also give the meaning of asking for enabling the Almighty to help us to be convinced that the right path indeed is the right one, to feel inclined towards following the right path, to be able to overcome all the difficulties, internal and external, and to be able to reach the ultimate destination, the ultimate goal of success of the paradise. In other words, Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim is an earnest prayer seeking the Almighty's help for the one praying to be guided in all different possible senses of the word, for the guidance to appear attractive, to appear convincing, for the worshipper, the seeker of truth to feel inclined, and so on. So that's what makes this surah so very important and so very effective in enabling us to express our feelings to the Almighty, feelings of somebody who is desperately looking for the truth. And that is exactly what the situation was in the case of some individuals who were living at the time when the Quran was about to be revealed. It is as if the Almighty has given words to those feelings, and those words, of course, being the Almighty's own words, are most appropriately expressing the feelings, the views of those people. So they ask for the Almighty's help. Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim, Sirat al-Lazina an'amta alayhim. When help is sought from the Almighty, it's not just done in a brief and vague manner. You see, it's human nature that when we are asking somebody to give us something that we need desperately, that we do not want to leave vague, unclear and ambiguous while asking. What we try to do is to explain it so clearly that there should remain no doubt about it. That is exactly what this prayer is doing. While on the one hand it is asking the Almighty to show to the one praying the right path, it is also explaining what exactly that right path is. What exactly is it that the individual is asking the Almighty to give? So the surah goes on to say, Sirat al-Lazina an'amta alayhim. The path that I am asking for is the path of those on whom you have showered your blessings. That is, I am not the first person to be going through the journey of this trial of this life. I know that there have been many, many others who have gone through this journey very successfully, most particularly the prophets, but certainly the companions of the prophets who belong to different categories. Some of them were truthful, Siddiq. Some of them were more prominent in ensuring that they become the true representatives of the Almighty's message, Shuhada. And some of them were the ones who, even though were ordinary in their abilities, yet they too were completely convinced in following the right path in a manner that they were steadfast and fully focused, who was Salihin. So what this prayer is saying to the Almighty is that we want to follow the same path that has already been followed by a large number of people who were successful in going through the journey of this life in the manner that you, O God, were pleased with them. You showered your mercies on them. This prayer is teaching us the fact that we humans, we do not meet with true success unless it is the Almighty's decision, unless He picks us and chooses for us to be given the right path. Uh, One might say that is it not something which is a little um, it's not very realistic. It seems to be a bit artificial. Well, the fact of the matter is that God is the one who picks and chooses for the individuals to be guided to the right path. He is the one who showers his blessings on humans for them to be able to believe, to be able to take interest in his message, and to be able to successfully go through the trial of this life. God's decision of showering his blessings on individuals is not based on random inclination of somebody who is not wise, who is not knowledgeable. God is knowledgeable, he is wise, he is fair, he is merciful, and he makes sure that all individuals who are keen, interested, and inclined to find the right path, he showers his mercy on them. We humans, when we realize that it is basically God's decision that he enables us to be guided, when we mention somebody who was guided, well, we choose to mention the Almighty's direct role in enabling the person to be guided. So, there is no exaggeration in the statement. The fact of the matter is that God is the one who an'amta alayhim, who showered his blessings, who gave his inam, his decision of guidance to people. And obviously those who were given the blessing of guidance were the ones who deserved it. But then it is the Almighty who enabled them to get the possibility of a trial which was easy for them to follow, which was not beyond their ability to follow, to overcome the challenges that one confronts while going through the right path. This is a positive mention of the people who were successful and whose path this prayer is asking God to give to the one praying, and it's expressed positively. But obviously, when we are talking about the right path, we also know that the importance of this right path is also significant because of the fact that it has enabled us to avoid the wrong path. So there are two aspects of the path of success. One aspect is that it's a path that enables an individual to go on the right track. And the other aspect of it is that it's the path that has enabled the individual to avoid the wrong ways. And if one knows that the people who followed the wrong ways were the ones who were unsuccessful, those who deserved the Almighty's displeasure, then obviously it makes the worth of the right path far more significant than if it was only looked at from the positive side. So the surah, the prayer at the end of it mentions غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ. We are seeking to be given the path which was not the one which was followed by those who earned displeasure. Now, in this expression, God Almighty has not been mentioned directly. It doesn't say that you decided to be displeased with them. It says passively, indirectly, they were the ones, غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ, who deserved to be treated with disdain, displeasure. That is, they behaved in a manner that they were found unworthy of the Almighty's mercy, and therefore they turned out to be maghdubi alayhim. Anybody, any individual, any nation that happened to fall into that category would be maghdubi alayhim. But it is one of the prominent examples of those who earned the Almighty's displeasure were some groups amongst the Jews. The Quran has always mentioned people of the book, in fact all humans, in a very balanced manner. The Quran doesn't mention the fact that all people belonging to a nation are alike. There are good and there are bad people within each nation. However, the fact of the matter is that there were many Jews, more particularly at the time when the Quran was being revealed, and in different stages of the Jewish history, who, despite knowing the truth from God, despite receiving it directly from God's messengers in a convincing manner, they went after their base desires and as a consequence lost the sight of the true path and became deserving of the Almighty's displeasure. That is why it's mentioned غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا الضَّالِّينَ. The other aspect of misguidance could be that one doesn't follow the right path because one is more obsessed with or inclined towards some other paths which are not from God, concocted, initiated by humans themselves. So instead of following the clear, simple path of the Almighty as revealed by Him to His messengers, there were people who were more keen and interested in following their own paths. Well, because they were arrogant, because they didn't bother to look at the other path more openly, or because of the fact that they found that the path of spirituality that they were experiencing is giving them some kind of an excitement which they would not want to part with by opening themselves to the other aspects, the newer aspects of truth, which were asking them to pay attention to them. So, Surah Al-Fatiha is, as I said earlier, is a prayer which very effectively expresses the emotions of those individuals who immediately before the revelation of the Quran, right at the time when the Quran was getting revealed, they were there in the Arabian society. They were not influenced by the negative influences of the society. They were not polytheistic in their approach. Their morals were good. Morally, they were upright, and they were seekers after truth. And the surah, the prayer, is very effectively and appropriately giving words to their feelings, and as a consequence has also become a very effective, appropriate prelude to the entire Quran. In other words, this Surah Al-Fatiha, is expressing the need for guidance, and the Quran is the guidance that was revealed by the Almighty in response to this need, in response to the prayer expressed in this need. That finishes the first part of my presentation, thankfully. Now I am moving on to the second part, wherein I am going to talk about one misunderstanding of the present day Muslims. The misunderstanding that I'm going to talk of is regarding the understanding many Muslims have in the present times, which causes them to believe that deeds are going to be weighed on the day of judgment in a manner, they're going to be scales. They're going to be a scale which will weigh good deeds, and alongside it, on the opposite side, are going to be bad deeds that are going to be weighed. So the scale is going to ultimately decide as to which of the two sides is weightier. If the side of the good deeds would turn out to be heavier, then the individual is going to enter the paradise. And if the side of the bad deeds is going to turn out to be heavier, then he is going to end up in the hell. فَأَمَّا مَنْ ثَقُلَتْ مَوَازِينُهُ. It's one of the passages of the Quran that is quoted for the purpose of proving the point. As for those whose weights are going to be heavier, فَهُوَ فِي عِيشَةٍ رَاضِيَةٍ. They're going to end up in a life of which they will be pleased with, the life that they're going to be satisfied with. وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَفَّتْ مَوَازِينُهُ. And as for those whose weights, whose scale is going to be lighter, فَأُمُّهُ هَاوِيَةٌ. Their eventual place would be a ditch. وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا هِيَ. And what do you consider? What do you fancy that ditch is going to be like? Narun Hamia. Is going to be filled with fire. So the conclusion drawn by many Muslims is that the ultimate decision of the hell or heaven for an individual is going to be based on whether the individual's good deeds would outweigh his bad deeds or vice versa. Now you might be wondering what's so wrong about it, or why I am categorizing this understanding as one of the more popular misunderstandings of Muslims. Well, here is my explanation. You see, accompanied by this understanding are some other details. Like, for example, there is this understanding that good deeds, when they are performed, the Quran says, we get the reward for it 10 times more than what that good deed deserved to be given. But if we do anything wrong, bad, the reward for it is exactly equivalent to what it deserved. Now, the end result you can imagine is that even if we do bad deeds 10 times more than we do good deeds, well, it's going to be balanced. But for that, you need to be particularly evil and bad to achieve that level. So the understanding is that don't worry too much. Keep doing the good things that you're doing, but don't be too particularly disturbed and scared about the bad deeds that you do. After all, you're a human being. You are living in this life, which is, let's face it, very, very attractive. It is glamorous. And who has created it? God. He wants us to enjoy our lives. And even then, He's promised that we won't have a problem in the next life. Because after all, it's going to be the scales of good and bad deeds that are going to decide as to which side of the ultimate decision we are going to end up in. Add to it another dimension, and you would know the acuteness of the problem. There are many Muslims who talk about exaggerated rewards, sawab, attached with very small, ordinary acts of piety. You know, you say a prayer on a particular occasion at a particular place, and you get the reward of God knows how many umrahs and how many hajj. You read a surah of the Quran, you read a verse for so many times, and you get rewards which are unimaginably numerous, very heavy. So the end result of all this on the mindset of the individual is that you know what, I've done quite a bit, alhamdulillah. I'm a very humble man, but let's face it, the good side of my scale is pretty heavy. So it doesn't really matter quite a lot, if I take a few bribes, if I tell lies, if I deprive others of their property or whatever. I acknowledge it's wrong. I mean, I'm not saying that it's not bad. But then let's face it, you know, on the day of judgment, it's going to be the balance of the scales that is going to decide as to which side of the fate I'm going to be accommodated. Don't forget that I keep doing umrahs, I've been doing hajj, I've been constructing mosques, I'm saying my prayers, I've been saying my prayers all night in Laylatul Qadr, I've been doing itikaf. What else do you expect from me? So, you know, this understanding of scales is what causes many people to feel comfortable with their religious moral behavior, despite the fact that they're complete frauds, despite the fact that they're the most unreliable people, cheats, liars, etc. At times, unfortunately, it's a fact that the more they grow in their religiosity, the more they grow in their evil ways. Why? Because of this confidence that, you know what, I mean, a religious person is scared of one thing more than anything else: failure in the next life, the hellfire, you know, the displeasure of the Almighty. Now, when that bad, negative possibility is adequately taken care of with the understanding of the scales, well, the door is open, wide open for individuals to do whatever they want to. And you know what? If a religious person has lost the fear of accountability on the day of judgment, very few humans can be more evil than them, potentially. So obviously you might ask, what is your problem? I mean, why do you think that this approach is wrong? Well, for one thing, let me say, even if I don't give any valid explanation, alternative explanation, this is a damn serious matter. It's something which it doesn't make sense. You know, religion should make an individual genuinely good. Well, we study that the religious message is focusing on tazkiyah, purification of the soul, purification of morals, purification of spirit, and progress, development, beautification of human personality in the real, genuine sense. Our prayers, our fasting, our zakat, almsgiving, our hajj, our umrah, every deed should contribute towards making us a better human, a more morally upright person, somebody who is popular amongst people because of his goodness, his good nature, somebody who has good heart, has feelings for others. So, no matter what the explanation of this, whatever the truth of this business of scales, it doesn't make sense. Why I am mentioning it before I give some kind of an explanation? Well, I want you to understand that there is a level of critical thinking which we all possess, which we have even if we don't have the arguments, we don't have the religious arguments with us. But there is a nature within us that keeps telling us that, look, this cannot be true. I don't buy it. It doesn't make sense. I'm not comfortable. Honestly, I tell you that there are religious people who don't have this critical approach. And it is because of the absence of this critical approach that you find that there are people who just blindly follow their scholars, these views, and they don't give any other point of view, any criticism, any significance. They don't give anything a damn, except for the fact that the path that they have chosen to follow is giving them this good news of success, despite their extremely poor performance, morally poor performance in some areas. But what exactly is the religious explanation of this phenomenon of scales? Well, the truth of the matter is that it seems that the Quran is saying in Surah Al-Araf, Surah number 7, just forgive me for not being very precise in the number of words, probably it's 6, 7 or 8, somewhere there. Surah number 7 and one of the earliest verses in Surah 6, 7, 8. The Quran says, Wal waznu yawma izinil haqq. Weight on that day is going to belong to only what is genuinely true, al-haq. That is, only al-haq, genuinely true deeds are going to carry weight. Now what it means is that the Quran is saying that, you know what, the concept of weighing is not going to be that you will be having one side weighing good deeds compared to the other side weighing bad deeds. No, not at all. It's going to be only good deeds that are going to be weighed. And good deeds are of two kinds. Good deeds are al-haq, genuine, and those who are otherwise, those which are otherwise not genuine, bogus, shallow, weightless. So if you're doing a good deed and it's genuine, then it is going to ward off evil deeds, dispel them, snub them. You will do things wrong, but then you will repent. You will go towards the evil way for a short while, some distance, and will come back. Why? Because your deeds, good deeds, are genuine. Bad deeds have no place. They have no role to play in the process of accountability. They only deprive good deeds of their true, genuine worth. So it's either that a person is genuinely good and his good deeds take away throw away, remove the bad deeds. Or it's the other way around. People are genuinely, or they become genuinely bad and evil, and their good deeds are only a show off. They're only meant to cause people to be impressed, but they don't carry any weight. So what the Quran is saying is, فَأَمَّا مَنْ ثَقُلَتْ مَوَازِينُ, those whose scales of weight are going to be heavy, that is the scales of weight of goodness, فَهُوَ فِي عِيشَةٍ رَاضِيَةٍ, they're going to be the ones who will have a life of pleasure. وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَفَّتْ مَوَازِينُ, and those whose weights are going to be light, that is their good deeds, their prayers, etc., they're going to be light. فَأُمُّهُ هَاوِيَةٌ, their ultimate fate is going to be in a ditch. وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا هِيَ, and what do you know what that ditch is going to be? نَارٌ حَامِيَةٌ, is going to be filled with fire. What I'm saying is what I find both in the Quran and Hadith. The Quran tells us that فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ, curse be on those who say their prayers, الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنْ صَلَاتِهِمْ سَاهُونَ, who are not mindful of their prayers, unaware of the true worth of their prayers. الَّذِينَ هُمْ يُرَاءُونَ, they are the ones who show off. وَيَمْنَعُونَ الْمَاعُونَ, and they don't even care to give small items of utility, items of little value to others. They say their prayers, but they're not helpful to others in the smallest of ways. The Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, is reported to have said that if somebody continues to lie and act upon lying while fasting, God is not interested for him to continue to stay hungry and thirsty. In other words, why on earth is he fasting? Likewise, the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, is reported to have said that there is a person who goes to the house of God after traveling for hundreds of miles. His clothes are soiled, he's hungry, he's tired, and he's praying to God, "Oh God, oh God." But why should God listen to his prayers when the money with which he has managed to travel and to clothe himself was ill-gotten? So no part of his worship is going to be acceptable. So that's exactly what I'm saying, that weight is going to be assigned to only those deeds which will be genuine. So it's a popular misunderstanding amongst Muslims that on the day of judgment their fate is going to be decided on the basis of the ultimate outcome of a competition between the weights of good and bad deeds. And because there are many Muslims who are supremely confident that even though they do many things bad, yet the good deeds that they do more than outweigh the bad deeds, therefore they will succeed in the hereafter, and the paradise is going to be their ultimate abode. This has caused many Muslims not to understand and follow their religion properly and seriously. May the Almighty enable us to understand His religion properly, and may He enable us to follow it as best as we can. Thank you very much for your attention. If you are hearing me, I am now available for your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Saab. I appreciate you doing the lecture today. If you have any questions, please go ahead and either click on the hand icon next to your name or type up your question and I'll read it on your behalf. You can ask a general question as well as something related to the topic. We're waiting. Thank you. questions? Kashif Khan sahab, go ahead and unmute your mic, please, and ask your question.
Why is it that most Muslims believe in rituals only rather than the true message of Islam?
I think it's because of the way religion is presented to them. You see, let's not blame the common man for what he's doing as far as the practice of religion is concerned. Normally, when you attend a religious gathering, what you find is that they are being taught that if they do such and such thing, if they follow these rituals, they will be rewarded with the paradise, they'll be guaranteed with success in the hereafter, and so on and so forth. This is because there are narratives, ahadith, which do apparently say something of that nature. However, the fact of the matter is that all ahadith narratives and all verses of the Quran ought to be understood in a manner that they are consistent with each other. So, when you find a statement attributed to the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, which is mentioning, for example, that if a person is saying his prayers regularly, he is guaranteed success in the hereafter. Or, for example, if he goes to Hajj and does a good Hajj, he comes back in a state that he is absolutely cleansed of all sins. These statements are correct, but with the understanding of the implications that are attached to these statements. The implications are the ones that you ought to find from within the Quranic text and other ahadith, which is what in many cases people don't do. You know, when the Prophet, for example, may God's mercy be on him, said that the one who says his prayers 5 times a day regularly, he is guaranteed success in the hereafter. What it actually meant was genuine, proper prayer, which is not, whose worth is not spoiled, is not threatened by evil deeds. Because if somebody is saying his prayers and alongside his prayers he is doing things which are strongly condemned, then there is something wrong with his prayers. He should repent, he should correct himself. But you know, these short, brief statements which kind of give people a reason to believe that these shortcuts are going to take them to the ultimate success, that's what causes them to be more inclined towards rituals, because rituals are easy to follow compared to doing your rituals properly and then behaving in the rest of your life accordingly. So people look for shortcuts. What's the way out? Well, the way out is that we should read the Quran properly and ponder over, reflect over its verses, be critical of ourselves in the light of the Quran, continue to review our performance, and obviously look at the quality of our prayers and rituals as well. Because I'm absolutely sure that if somebody says her prayers properly, the individual has to be a good person. But what it actually means is that when you pray, you ask yourself as to whether you really understand what you're saying, whether you're getting the kind of feelings that you should get when you are talking to God, and whether your conscience seems to be satisfied. But many people don't bother doing it. So, a brief answer to your question is that people are made to understand a version of religion which is misleading unless you go a little more deeper in understanding what those apparent statements mean, which are presented to them without their proper context.
Thank you, Khalid. Kaishab, does that answer your question, or is there anything you'd like to follow up with?
Yes, I have a follow-up question, if you please.
Sure.
My question, Dr. Zaheer, is that if we look at the Surah Inam, the cattle, I believe it's 155 to 160. Basically, that gives us the guiding principles how to live our life as a true Muslim. It is we can call the commandments, which should be the principles or the pillars of Islam. Rather, we talk about namaz, roza, hajj, zakat, jihad, but we don't talk about the way we should live our life as is detailed in there. I may be misquoting those verses, but they are there, 155 to 160 or 160 onwards. Thank you.
I think you're right. I agree with you. You see, there are two parts of our religion. One part is what is described as al-hikmah, which is comprised of both principles of morality as well as the beliefs on which those principles are based. The verses that you are referring to are talking about the al-hikmah part of it, which I am very convinced is the more important part of religion. Without al-hikmah, without morality, there is no basis of any aspect of religion, whether rituals, whether beliefs, etc. Because unless you are a good human, you cannot be a good believer, you cannot be a good Muslim. That's the message that you get from the Quran, no matter which part you read of it. The other part of religion is Al-Kitab, which is the Sharia, which includes rituals and some other injunctions of the Almighty. Al-Kitab or Al-Sharia plays a role to explain or clarify those aspects of morality which humans are not able to understand clearly on their own. So we needed guidance from the Almighty, from the heavens, to be able to give us clarity, throw light on some of those aspects where our intellect and morality on its own couldn't have come up with convincing answers. Unfortunately, what has happened is that a hollow understanding of Sharia, only some aspects of it, without the accompanying support and depth of al-hikmah, morality, is what people have been given. So, what I mentioned in my earlier answer, that a very brief recipe to success is presented, which is quite often without a proper description of the context, which causes a believer to be misled, to be led to believe that by acting upon a few rituals, the Almighty is going to ultimately decide the fate of the individual in his favor. So I do quite agree with you that the reference of Surah Al-An'am or some other similar references in the Quran, which are there to let us know that that's what the Almighty wants from us. I am not suggesting that rituals are not important. Well, al-hikmah with al-kitab is what completes religion. A Muslim should be good in his morals and should also be good in following the Almighty's other expectations like prayers, fasting, etc., which are there to strengthen our morals, which are the result of our morally upright inclination, our personality. The two go hand in hand. Our beliefs without morals are empty. We believe on the basis of our understanding of morality. So they are all interlinked. But unfortunately, the way religion is being presented nowadays in many Muslim societies, not all I'm sure, it gives a false impression that simply by following a few rituals here and there, we'll be ultimately successful.
Kashif Sab, did you get your answer? I can ask others, or you have a follow-up? Thank you, Dr. Sab. Anyone else? We have about 8 minutes remaining in the class time. If you have a question, please go ahead. Dr. Sab, it looks like that this is one of the days.
I have a question here. Somebody else has asked me. Can I read it out?
Yes.
I've been asked, what then is the right meaning of verse وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَفَّتْ مَوَازِينُهُ فَأُمُّهُ هَاوِيَةٌ? Well, as I tried to explain in my presentation, what it means is that those people whose good deeds are going to be light in weight or are going to be weightless, they are going to be, or they'll end up in the hellfire. What it means is what has been explained in the Quran in many passages. Sometimes the Quran says that there are people who zalamu anfusahum, who have been unfair to themselves, who have harmed their souls, khasiru anfusahum. That also means the same thing, that they have been deliberately doing things that are evil and wrong, which has caused their souls, their nature to be harmed. Sometimes the Quran says that there are people who have preferred this life over the next life. So that again is a reference to the same attitude. There is a mention in the Quran which says, in response to the wishful thinking of the Jews, who thought that quite the same way as the Muslims think, that because they are chosen people, therefore they are going to be successful in the hereafter no matter what they do. And even if some unfortunate people amongst them are going to be given the punishment of the hell, it's going to be temporary, short-lived, and they will eventually come out of it. The Almighty, after mentioning this understanding of the Jews, responds in Surah Al-Baqarah, the 2nd chapter, verse 82. Bala man kasaba sayyatan. The truth of the matter is that whoever commits a crime, wa ahatat bihi khatiyatuhu, and his crime overcomes his personality, it just overwhelms him. Faulaika ashabun nar. Such are the people who are going to be the inhabitants of fire. Hum fiha khalidun. They are going to be there not for a few days, but forever. So, what this verse means is that those people whose good deeds will carry no weight, they will perform them, but because of one reason or the other, because of their arrogance, because of the fact that they showed off, because of the fact that they were overwhelmed by evil, etc., their good deeds would actually become worthless. And that is what is meant by وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَفَّتْ مَوَازِينُهُ, that their weight is going to be light or weightless. I hope it clarifies what I wanted to say.
Dr. Sab, I have about 4 minutes remaining, and there's another question from Nazla Malik.
Right.
She says, on the day of judgment, you will be judged based on good deeds. Are your obligations such as prayer, zakah, hajj separate from good deeds. For example, practicing kindness, being just, fair, not stepping on anyone's rights, etc.
You see, it all depends on who you are. If you are a Muslim who has been introduced to the message of God properly and convincingly, then all these rituals are actually an obligation that you owe to God. And if you know that God has asked you to do all these acts of goodness, well, and you are avoiding them, then you are not properly attending to the duties of the one who matters the most. You're not properly attending to the duties of God. However, if there is somebody who has not as yet been properly introduced to the message of God, and nobody can decide about it, it's only God, the wise, the knowledgeable, who will ultimately decide on the basis of pure merit as to whether a person knew what the truth was or didn't know what the truth was, and didn't have any reasons to believe that it was true. He had genuine excuses. So if there is somebody who has not as yet been properly introduced to the religious message, if he or she does the good deeds that are good, by birth, we know it a priori, and that is what the person is doing well in that area, and had no reasons to believe that these religious people were presenting something which was morally important, then obviously God knows the best. God is going to only make the individual accountable for the acts of morality that he or she was expected to do.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? We still have a couple minutes. If you have a question, please either click on the hand icon or type your question. Shahid Ashrafi, go ahead with your question, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Assalamu
Right.
alaikum. Is there some kind of publication or something which takes those misconceptions in account to be read? Is available somewhere?
To be honest, the format of presentation that I was asked to follow was Quran, misunderstandings, and question answers. My friend Dr. Shahzad Salim, the worthy scholar, he is taking care of these classes, and he has written a book on the misunderstandings himself, and I think he has actually mentioned quite a few of them in his book. I, on my own, because I am more of a kind of a teacher who's fond of talking more and writing less, but I've done some bit of writing on this area. I just mentioned 5 areas of misunderstanding. If you are interested, I can send the copy of it on email.
Besides, if I could add something, Dr. Saab,
Please.
Shahzad Salim Saab's book, Common Misconceptions in Islam, is available, as an English book, is available through Amazon, as well as our bookstore in US.
Good.
I'll send a link. When I send you the recording link, I'll send a link to our bookstore in US as well as Amazon, our listing. If you so decide, you can order it directly from there as well.
Excellent. Excellent.
Thank you. Our time is up. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Dr. Saab. But if I can take one follow-up from Kashif Saab, he wanted to ask something. Go ahead, Kashif Saab, unmute your mic before we end the session. Shahid Saab, you go ahead, unmute your mic and ask, please. Kashif Saab, do you have anything you need to ask?
Yes, if you could kindly send the link of Dr. Zaheer's as well on that instead of the email so we can all share that.
Sure. Dr. Saab, if you can send me that, I'll include that in my email.
I'll do it. I'll do that, inshallah.
Thank you. And that ends our today's session. Shahid Saab, you still have your hands raised. If you have something you need to add, please go ahead, and otherwise we'll end the session today. Thank you very much, Dr. Khalid.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Inshallah, we'll meet next Saturday. I appreciate you filling in for Dr. Shahzad.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum.
Bye.